Hi, I'm Don Mooers and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Recently, there was a press conference with school officials, the executive, and the county council to talk about the problem of overcrowding in our schools with a request for the state to help Montgomery County with this issue. Jane DeWinter is here to report. As always, The Beacon is featuring some very interesting health stories in its November issue. Stuart Rosenthal, editor and publisher of the newspaper, is here to give us the details. Orion Ventures is focused on working with clients to develop and implement strategies to increase economic opportunity. Mike Knapp, the founder of the company, he's here to discuss all about economic opportunity in our community and ways that we can be looking forward to growth in the future. Rotary has many projects, both local and international. Peter Kyle, the district governor of Region 7620, which covers Montgomery County, is joining us today to tell us about Rotary's exciting ventures. Jane, welcome.
Thank you.
Always great to have you back here.
Thank you very much.
So we were speaking before the show, and you were saying how wonderful it was that these individuals who were reported in the press did not get along with each other so well, seem to have a common purpose around trying to address this overcrowding issue.
Exactly. Last week, the superintendent released his capital improvement plan request, and then this week, the county executive, state delegation, Board of Education, and county council, as well as Montgomery County Council of PTAs, jointly held a press conference to announce that they were embarking on a campaign to get an extra $20 million, an additional $20 million in construction aid from the state.
Okay, and why would it take this? I mean, shouldn't it just be a simple matter of we've got all these students, we need to get them in schools? The state would just say, of course, Montgomery County.
Well, the state allocates a certain amount of money per year for school construction, and then it divvies it up. And Montgomery County, for years and years and years, has done a lot of pre-funding of projects. In other words, instead of waiting for the state to pony up their share, the council has gone ahead and funded some. So right now, even though I think they're anticipating sort of a regular contribution from the state of $40 million and are asking for $20 million more, we currently have a backlog of the state owing us $160 million for projects that are already built that were eligible for state funding.
You would think that would be the first request then, is to meet their obligations of the past before we ask for more today.
Well, it's really just, I mean, they are going to go down the list. I mean,
but it's not going to happen. Is that what they've given up on that $160 million? Is that
no. I mean, that's like a rolling list, and they keep whittling it down and down. But I think the idea is that in Montgomery County, the council has been very proactive in terms of saying is that if our kids need to have a school, we're going to build it, even if the state doesn't come up with the money, and then we go back and we're still keep asking the state for money. I think the argument that they're trying to make right now is the fact that we've had in the last 5 or 6 years growth in our system of about 15,000 students.
Right, fantastic growth.
And it's more than most of the rest of the state altogether.
Well, and that's why I think it's an important thing to remember that we see growth where much of the rest of the state doesn't. But isn't it true that we spend in Montgomery County nearly as much in capital projects and schools as the state does for the entire state? So that's one of the things we're confronting each year.
Oh, right. That that our capital budget is about as much as the state is divvying up among all the different counties.
Right.
I think one of the reasons the legislature went for this is last year there was a special request for Baltimore City, because at that point it was because the schools were really in such bad shape. So the pitch this year for Montgomery County is, listen, we've had so much enrollment growth, more than the rest of the state, and we're slated to have another, I think, 11,000 kids over the next
Let me ask you a question about that $160 million backlog. Why can't we just not pay? Why can't we just take that money out? I mean, we spend, Montgomery County is the golden goose of the state. Why can't we just have that money? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
the state collects that money.
Yeah, the state collects it. I mean, that's like
we have a
saying
comptroller
is
from
that
Montgomery
if
County.
you think that That's like saying, why are you paying federal taxes at all if you think that you disagree with something? I mean,
No, that's
some
not
of these
disagreeing with
things
anything. We're replacing what the state's obligation is, so I don't quite
Right,
understand
but the
what
state
issue.
has to appropriate. I mean, basically, the state has to approve them. I mean, when you build a school, the state has certain formulas that they will reimburse up to certain amounts for certain kinds of projects. And so, we've done projects that would warrant us getting $160 million.
But they hadn't agreed to it, you're
Well, some of it they have, so that there is a
And
backlog.
do these funding issues impact on test scores? I mean, Montgomery County and Maryland has wonderful test scores. Is there going to be some adverse impact on academic achievement by not funding some of these programs?
I think that there is a connection between where you send a child to school and where, how well they do. I mean, when you're in a school where half of the bathrooms in the school don't work, don't flush, or blocked off, whatever, I think things like that make an impression on kids. And especially, how we value them. If here we are in Montgomery County, which is one of the, best off counties in the state, if not in the country, and you're sending a message that, okay, we just don't think education is important enough that you should be able to go flush a toilet during the day. That's a great segue into
It's certainly,
your
I was
story.
thinking that very thing.
We've got about 30 seconds, so let's go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, one of the challenges I think we face here in the county is we see tremendous growth. Much of the rest of the state doesn't see that, can't even really relate to it. I mean, for us to have 10,000 new students over the
That's
course of a
more
couple
than
of years,
some districts.
significantly more. You've got many of our school districts in the rest of the state have one
About
high
15
school.
seconds left.
And so I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. That's one of the big challenges, is how we convince other people to participate.
What's going to happen out of this?
We'll see. I think they're going to continue to hold hands and ask for the money. I think that one thing is that since the superintendent's budget delayed modernizations again, I think that's a guarantee that they're
Okay.
going to get parents out to be saying, give us more money.
Okay, give us more money, the final word. Thanks, Jane. That segue into your
Yes.
section here. Stuart Rosenthal, welcome back.
Thank you, nice to be here.
Again, the Beacon with so many health stories. They're always fantastic
Yes,
to read.
yes, we have some very interesting ones this month that sort of touch on the subject that Jane was raising.
We need a little intestinal fortitude, too.
Right, absolutely. Let me start by saying everybody wants to learn how to lose weight more easily, right? It's a difficult chore for anybody. And there is some developments here that may actually someday make it much easier for people. And what they've discovered is, apparently they've known this for a while, that the intestinal bacteria that we harbor in our stomachs, they differ in our intestines, are different from if you're obese versus being thin.
Okay.
And so what they wanted to see is how well, is that a result of being obese, or is that what causes a person to be obese?
Interesting.
So they took human bacteria and they put them into mice that had been cleaned out, so they had no bacteria in their intestines. And the ones that were given the germs from the obese people, even though they ate the same diet as the thin mice, they grew fatter and they had worse metabolism just from the intestinal bacteria that they harbored. So then they transferred them. They sort of had the mice, this is terrible, but they eat each other's feces. So they put them both into the same cage and they exchanged germs. And the obese mice began to lose weight.
Okay.
So, I mean, it seems to be a direct connection that these bacteria must have something to do with people not being able to convert their food in such a way that it makes them
I
fat.
really can't see that system turning into any kind of commercial diet product.
Okay, well, you don't have to buy stock in it. I think I will. Well, see, that raises the next story. So the question is, would anybody be interested in something like that?
Yeah.
Well, for a life and death cause, they are all the time. They call them sort of jokingly poop transplants, but they are transplants between people who have healthy bacteria in their guts to people who don't, when they have a terrible infection like C. difficile, which is a very, very dangerous bacterial infection that causes diarrhea and often death in very old people. And it's common in nursing homes, and it's very hard to kill, and it's very hard to get off a person, and people get it all the time. It just stays around. So they've developed now, they have these transplants which work in the last-ditch effort. So a new group has put together a program where they can make pills out of just the bacteria. They clean out the good bacteria from healthy poop, and they convert it into pills, and they have the people just swallow the pills. And it's so much easier than having this major kind of transplanty thing, which involves like a colonoscopy or whatever. Has far less risk, and it seems to be almost completely effective. They've tried it only in a few cases, but it's been very good.
So the thought is perhaps in the future we'll be able to do that with the
Yes,
obese,
so I'm thinking
non-obese.
I put the two stories
that.
together because I thought they should talk to each other. What can I say?
That's a great investment opportunity. I think Orion Ventures will be right there with us in our next thing. But what other stories are coming
Okay,
up?
well, another issue, much more interesting in the sense that it affects everybody, and that is, when you have a cold, a respiratory infection, is it a virus? Is it bacterial? Do I need an antibiotic or not? Everybody's going to their doctors and demanding antibiotics because it's lasted 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They feel terrible. And that is one of the reasons why we've so overprescribed antibiotics that they don't work very well anymore.
Right.
It's very dangerous. I mean, we could all go back 200 years in terms of our health by not having good antibiotics. So it's very important to distinguish them. Well, they now have a blood test. It's not commercially available, but they have tried this out. They can tell genetically our bodies start they know whether it's a bacteria or a virus even before we have symptoms of the disease, very early on in the process. So they can take a blood sample and check the genetics of it and determine whether this is a virus or a bacterial infection being harbored in the body. So it takes about 12 hours to process that. It's much faster than an overnight strep test or one of these other kinds of things, or several days sometimes it takes. So that's another great development I think could make big difference in our.
Well, one of the other things that's interesting too is the overuse of antibiotics, overprescription of that, has a direct impact on the microbiome and what
Absolutely.
you're seeing in the first two stories that you reported on.
Everything's related. What can I say?
Right.
Right.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Your health expos?
Very successful. They were last month,
Right.
November, I should say, this
Right.
month. And very successful, nice crowds. We, for the first time, Silver Spring Civic Center, and it worked very nicely.
Right.
It's a lovely facility.
It's a great facility.
People had, there's free parking, and the flow was great. People enjoyed it. We're going to do it again next year at the same place. We're very happy.
What was the biggest surprise for you from the health expo?
The biggest surprise is that our keynote speaker didn't show up.
So did you speak? Were you the keynote?
No, the keynote was the scientific director of the National Institute on Aging, which is part of the federal government, and we were still under shutdown at that time, right? So he was not allowed to come. But we worked a workaround. He sent us a DVD of him giving his talk, and we showed it on 2 television screens in the main room, and people were fine with it. And then we had someone from another office who wasn't government related, but who knew the subject, answer questions afterwards. So everybody was fine, no one was upset, and it was very interesting.
Oh, that's a nice wrinkle.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about when it's a preview of the December issue?
Well, that's it. I guess the story that we're going to do as our cover is about this new NeuroExpand Brain Institute. I don't know if you've heard of this kind of thing. This is a fellow doctor who's been around for a number of years developing this, but he believes that, as you've seen, doing puzzles and games and things that are sort of good for your brain, he has a whole program to help a person keep their brain power into their late life and not to have troubles with it.
Great.
So that's what we're writing about.
Can't wait to read. Thanks, Stuart. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Mike Knapp, welcome back.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Orion, tell us about what you're doing and this whole genesis of what you created.
What we're trying to do really is to focus in the area of economic opportunity. We live in a county that people think everything is great, and it is. But the reality is that we have tremendous growth opportunities that we haven't paid a lot of attention to. So we are working with private sector organizations, with the municipalities, to identify how to take those opportunities and leverage them and really expand them. So for example, one of the things we're working on right now is with Montgomery County, the state of Maryland, and the National Institutes of Standards and Technology to help bring together the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, which is to really begin to leverage our strength in the county in cybersecurity. We as a state are seen as preeminent leaders in cybersecurity, which is great, but most of where we make our money from is the federal government. And that's about a $14 billion market. But the commercial side is about a $120 billion market.
Okay.
And we as a state haven't really done much in that area. And by using NIST, which works very closely with the private sector to identify solutions for the financial services sector or healthcare IT, we can begin to help grow those businesses here in the county. And so we're putting a strategy together to try and leverage all of those pieces and bring all of the players together.
Interesting. I know there's a very respected cybersecurity company up in Colombia. SourceFire just got bought by a Californian company. So I think swooping in, I don't get these guys down to Montgomery County would be.
Well, it's not even get them into Montgomery County. It's really to think, how do we take where we have a strength in our region and state and really leverage that for a whole other market segment? If we can take a $14 billion market and expand it into a $120 billion market, think of the opportunities that begins to provide.
So you're saying our local businesses are not even trying to get the business around the country?
It's just a different segment, and so we have focused federally, because that's where we obviously have those assets, but because and often those tend to be focused internally, so they're much more defensive postures, although we're finding lately that they're a little more aggressive than perhaps people had anticipated. But so backing out from that and saying, what of those technologies could be applicable in the financial services sector, and how do we make those connections?
Let me ask you this, Mike. We've got such a diverse community here. We are the mosaic of the world in Montgomery County. Tell me about the inclusion and the development of small businesses and ventures and trying to unlock the entrepreneurial spirit of these folks who've come from all over the world, the best and the brightest, to come to Montgomery County.
Well, that's another project that we're working on with the county. So for years we've had an incubator program, which has been fine, except we started 15 years ago and it was focused on providing space to small companies, in particular technology companies, because that's what they needed. What we haven't really done is revise that and said, what do small companies need now, especially given the diversity that we see in our community. And so other communities have been very much more quick to jump on supporting those, identifying companies in particular sectors, identifying the mentorship support, identifying seed capital, creating places where those small companies can get together and feed off each other. So for example, even just down in the District of Columbia, they've started an incubator of sorts called 1776 that has started from a venture community, but has been supported by the District of Columbia and many other businesses in town. It's really just a great big bullpen that has about 150 companies that have different space, that they're there sharing ideas on a regular basis. What we're trying to do is take those same concepts here and begin to spread them throughout the county, so we can really tap into that demographic diversity that we see, because we just haven't cultivated that here. So we've got to really create a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship in a way that we haven't yet seen.
So in trying to shift the market, or shift I guess it would be the seller, or whoever is producing cybersecurity services, et cetera, from the federal government to the private sector, are you working with existing firms that are doing that? Are you also looking at trying to do anything to cultivate, like to incubate new firms, or to?
No, that's one of the things we're trying to do, is to, one, identify what are the specific industry sectors, what companies are already working or have applications, because they may be smaller companies, so they're not competing directly with a Cisco, but may have products that are in that same space that are local that we can begin to bring in. At the same time, we're also trying to identify technologies that may exist within some of the federal agencies that could be applicable in other markets, and try to transfer some of that technology commercially out, so that small businesses here could potentially leverage that and help provide.
25 seconds.
So who pays you for this if you're trying to do this big grand
strategy? For that one, we have some combination of NIST, the state, and the county are our customers for that. As we move forward, ideally, we're going to be working with some of the smaller businesses to help them identify where those areas of opportunity are, and help them navigate through those rough waters.
Confident in the future?
Very confident in the future.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
There'll always be a need for cybersecurity, right?
Well, and that's just one sector.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mike.
Certainly.
Look forward to having you back.
I hope to be back.
Peter, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You are like the uber Rotarian in this area. You are.
I haven't been called that, but I am delighted to have that sort of appellation. I'm the district governor for Rotary.
So, district governor, you've got lots and lots of clubs, of Rotary groups within Maryland, I guess, D.C.
That's right.
So tell us about your
64
world.
clubs. I'm the district governor, as the official representative of Rotary International in this district.
Okay.
The district extends from Harvard to Grace in the north on the Delaware border, west to Frederick, south to Washington, D.C., further south, southern Maryland to Lexington Park, Annapolis on the east, and all points in between. 64 clubs, 2,300 Rotarians.
Now, a little bit about Rotary. What is Rotary, and what are you trying, in your clubs? Tell us a little bit about some of the things that they're doing.
Rotary is the oldest service organization in America, and probably in the world. It was founded in 1905 in Chicago, and it has grown now to 1.2 million Rotarians all around the world, 34,000 clubs in over 200 countries and jurisdictions. It's a service organization primarily. More recently, our focus is on 6 areas: water and sanitation.
Before you get in that, there's a website up there people can learn about the district. And Rotary.
Rotary.org is the international website,
Okay.
and Rotary 7620.org is the district website.
Okay.
And you can find all that you need to know and more about Rotary on that website.
Why don't you go back and real quick go through
Six areas of focus now: peace and conflict resolution, water and sanitation, maternal and child mortality, basic literacy, and economic community development, which ties in with what you're doing.
Sure.
So it's a very exciting dimension. We've moved from being purely service into much more community-oriented, much more of an international development player. So we're excited about the direction of Rotary in Montgomery County and in the state generally.
Perfect. Now, some of your clubs are involved in exciting projects both in the U.S. and around the world. Maybe you could highlight.
I think all of the clubs are. We have a lot of international projects. One project that has recently been approved involved Thrive in 5, a project to get rid of malaria in Mali. We have a variety of water projects. My own club was involved in a water project in Bolivia, building 7 water wells for a very disadvantaged community. We've provided ambulances, we've provided HIV/AIDS clinics, we've provided health care.
Can I ask, is it your own members who go and do this work, or do you hire people to do it?
No, it's a combination. The members raise money. The money goes towards the Rotary Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Rotary International. But increasingly, many of our members are involved in these projects. So we have a cadre of Rotarians who have special expertise in water, and they get involved in water projects all around the world, or in literacy, or in any of the other 6 areas of focus. So it's an exciting.
So does each club then raise the money for a particular project, or do they work on the projects themselves?
Again, it's a combination of the two, and that's a very good question. Rotarians raise money generally. The money goes to the Rotary Foundation, and through a leveraging system, the money comes back in 3 years' time. Double the amount of money comes back, and that is the money that's used to fund international projects all around the world. We have a lot of money, a lot of projects coming into America. We had in Rockville, a group of Indian clubs actually financed a mammogram bus for Rockville. Pretty exciting development. And we have, of course, a lot of local projects. We have a very good oyster project down in St. Mary's Bay. We're developing an oyster farm to try and restore oysters to their rightful place in Chesapeake Bay. It may take 1,000 years because of the damage that has been done, but we're making a start.
Now, do you go out and seek people to help, or are people coming to you through a grants process? Or
the clubs initiate the grants themselves. Depending on what's involved in the grant, we have a lot of training grants, for instance. We might put a project together, a $50,000 project, which involves sending a group of doctors to Russia. Most of the doctors will be non-Rotarians, and the idea is to finance their training opportunities in Russia, and sometimes to have Russian doctors come to America to spend time in an American hospital to learn how we do things here. So it works both ways.
So by participating in a local road race sponsored by Rotary, you aren't just supporting that local club and helping them raise some money so they can meet every week or every other week. You're actually supporting a project in Mali or a...
Again, it's both. I mean, a lot of the local projects are designed to raise local money for local activities. But a proportion of that money generally goes back to the Rotary International to fund the international activities of Rotary International.
It's gone by so quickly, about 10 seconds. You got your start as a Rotary Scholar, right?
I did. I came to America. I come from New Zealand. Yeah. That accounts for my strange accent. And I've been here ever since, and I just love it. Thank you very much.
And you love Rotary?
I love Rotary. Oh, yeah. I've been a Rotary for 40 years. So
Thanks, Peter. And thanks all of you for joining me here today. And thank you, the viewing audience, for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers. Please join us next week at this very same time.